Hello, and welcome to today's lesson. So, today we're going to be talking about pulling apart the prompt as soon as I can get this PowerPoint to upload. There we go. All right, so we're talking about pulling apart the prompt. And this is important because we want to make sure that we're on topic when we respond to a prompt. As we saw the other day when we looked at that first rubric, being on topic, addressing the task and the stimulus are very, very important. It's about half the grade. All right, the first step is to just read the prompt. You don't do anything to it. There's no other thing to do here. You just read it, get an idea, make sure that you're understanding all the parts of it, get a good general picture of what it's asking for. That's the first step. Just read it. Once you've read it, you're going to start pulling it apart. The first thing you want to do is identify some key prompt terms. In your Teams application, there's a file folder. It's under Files, and you will see a document that I've put there that's got all of the terms that teachers tend to use to show you what it is we want you to do. This tells you whether you're going to be writing a narrative, an argumentative paper, or an explanatory paper. So be sure and check that list, become familiar with it, use it as you're doing these first couple of assignments so that you know when I say evaluate, that you should be looking at writing an argumentative paper. The next thing you want to do is look for academic vocabulary. Now, what I'm talking about here are those words that attach to a specific subject area in school. So if you saw words like chromosomes or photosynthesis or ionic bonds, that's a science paper. And so you're going to highlight those terms or circle them, whatever it is you need to do to make sure that you're addressing those words, and you're going to want to use those same terms in your paper somewhere. Teachers really like to see you use the same type of vocabulary that they've given you in that prompt. If it's a social studies prompt, you're going to look for words that have to do with social studies, like Congress or conflict or whatever type of thing that you've been hearing about in your social studies class. Same thing in your reading class. You're looking for those reading words like tone or theme. And here, conflict means something different. So you want to make sure you're using the words correctly for that class. Yeah, you might even get a math prompt someday. And so equations and uh, variables and all those things. You're looking for that type of vocabulary that's specific to that particular task. Okay, here is probably the most important step. You want to turn the prompt into a question. Now, I'm going to walk you through this. I'm going to show you how it's done. But this is very important. Most prompts are not written as questions, but they tell you to answer the task. So that means there's got to be a question in there somewhere. So you're going to look for question type words and turn that prompt into a question. And if you make sure that your thesis statement answers that question and then you keep your paper focused on your thesis, you can't go wrong. This is the critical step. This is the most important. A lot of times teachers will say include details about. Okay, this will tell you exactly what it is we want you to write paragraphs on most of the time. So if I tell you there's 3 details, that means there's probably going to be 3 body paragraphs. This isn't 100% hard, fast rule, but it is a really good guide for telling what it is teachers want you to write about in those body paragraphs. So be looking for that. When you start writing longer papers in high school and college, those will be the sections of your paper, is those details that your teacher or professor is asking for. Very nice quote here that tells you how important those details are. All right, last, you want to kind of try to get an idea of how long the paper needs to be. If it's got 2 details, then you're probably going to need 2 body paragraphs, and then you include an introduction and conclusion. So you have a 4-paragraph paper. Again, this isn't a hard, fast rule, but at least you have some idea of what it is you're looking at and what the teacher's expecting as far as length is concerned. All right, now let's put this into practice. I'm going to show you what it is I want you to do in today's assignment. So let me open up the correct document here on my computer. Here I have this prompt. So the first step was to read the prompt. So I'm going to read through it. Read Playing for the Team and the Hazards of Team Sports. Evaluate both articles and consider the positive and negative effects of youth programs in schools. Determine whether or not middle schools should be allowed to continue competitive intramural full contact sports programs. Justify your response with examples from the text. So I've read through it. The next step was to look for, look for key prompt terms. So I have that list, I've got it in front of me, and I see that I've got the word evaluate here. So I'm going to highlight that, which follows the instructions on your assignment today. So you saw what I did. I used my mouse to highlight over the word, and then I come up here to the top to that highlight function and just clicked on it. Okay, determine may or may not be a key prompt term. Justify definitely is. So I'm going to highlight over that. I'm going to click on the highlight feature. Okay, then I'm looking for academic vocabulary. Now, this paper doesn't really belong to any particular class. It's not really a social studies paper or a science paper. It's not really even a reading paper, but there are some things that I'm going to highlight here that I see as pretty important words. I've got consider. That's pretty important. And what I'm going to do with those pieces of academic vocabulary, I'm going to have you underline those. So I'm coming up here to the underline feature. There it's underlined. I've got determine. That's pretty important, so I'm going to underline that. Okay, the next thing that I need to do is decide, I have you deciding what format it should take, and by that, I'm asking you to tell me whether this is a narrative, an explanatory, or an argumentative. Based on evaluate and justify, I'm going to say this is argumentative. And then the last step is to write down that question. So here's my question. I'm looking for words that start questions. And should you do something? That's a question, right? Should. So I'm going to look at this sentence here, and I'm going to turn it into a question. Should middle schools continue to allow competitive intramural full contact sports programs? And there's my question. And that's what I want you to do for each of these examples on the assignment. All right, time for you to get started.